Not only are we going to talk about just how to approach them, but we'll talk about like what's a good tape, and then also a list of no-nos, because
This is episode 74 of the Alt Arts Academy podcast, How to Get Booked as a Comedian, with Dean Victor Varnado and Vice Queen Roxy Lim.
This is the Arts Academy podcast put on by the New York Alt Arts Academy. I'm Dean Victor Varnado. This is Vice Queen Roxy. Vice Queen Roxy, she's great. Take my word on it. Also, we have a very special guest today who is Rebecca Trent. She not only is the founder and one of the owners of the Creek in the Cave in Austin, she also has run the Creek in the Cave in New York for many, many years. Also, she is one of the founders and bookers for Skankfest. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right? And then also you scout for other festivals as well. Is that also correct?
That's correct, but predominantly in an unofficial position.
Well, I mean, as a club owner, you're always scouting, but then you're also you're also in contact with festivals too about comedians.
Correct.
Sometimes.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, so that's all great information. What we're talking about today, we're going to do 2 episodes. The first episode, what we're going to be talking about is how to get booked as a comedian. We're going to talk about how to get booked at a venue, and we're also going to talk about how to get booked on festivals. Not only are we going to talk about just how to approach them, but we'll talk about like what's a good tape, and then also a list of no-nos, because people need to know those.
There are those no-nos.
People need to know those no-nos because when people do those no-nos, you are immediately disqualified in a lot of people's heads. For instance, I was running an audition once. It was an improv audition. A man thought it would be hilarious to grab a woman's breast on stage, and he was immediately disqualified because she didn't really want that to happen. She didn't know him, so he was a no-no. All right. Anyway. He's lucky he didn't go to jail, but he didn't. But that's beside the point. The point is we're talking about how to get booked as a comedian. Let's first start talking with a couple of questions for Rebecca. Rebecca, thanks for coming. You're one of my best friends in the world, by the way.
Same.
Also, you look like you're in a in a dark cave or something. It's
well, I am in the cave.
You are in the cave of the Creek in the Cave?
Yeah, I'm at the front bar that's not open yet, and there's a dark blue curtain behind me right now.
Now, as the, I guess I like the other layout better, Vice Queen. as a club owner, like you've had comedians obviously approach you for stage time a lot.
Sure.
And so just very quickly, let's talk about like how to best approach you for stage time. Like if you're a club owner, like what's the best way? I mean, and there's lots of different ways. So why don't you just tell me like your favorite?
My favorite is when a comic has seen that I'm an audience and they've killed, and then they come up and ask me for stage time. That's
like
favorite.
when they walk off stage and it's hot, and then but in that case, like it's like you do watch open stages, right?
Correct.
Right.
All the time.
And a lot of owners don't though, but you're one of the owners that do. And then so if someone kills at an open stage, that's a way that they can get to you. I'm also speaking from the point of view, I think, of comedians who just don't have connections and don't know anybody, because that's where a lot of people start. And so if they were at the Creek in the Cave, if they kicked ass at a open mic and then they walked off stage and they were like, hey, I was funny. Is there a way we can talk about stage time? That's perfectly okay with you?
Perfectly okay with me. It's preferred if it's after I see them go up. When folks ask me for a spot before I've seen them go up, I typically ask, okay, well, who do you roll with? Like, who are your friends? Like, I like to get recommendations from like 1 or 2 comics that are more established that say, yeah, this is somebody that needs to be like pulled up,
How do you feel about people approaching you and then saying things like, hey, will you watch me? Like if they see you at an open stage and they're like, hey, I'm about to go up into people, and they ask you if you will watch them. Does that annoy you?
It's all about timing. It depends. Like right now, I'm not in a position to drop everything because I am still very much we're still very much in our infancy right now. So I'm trying to literally build a club and build marketing for a club and organize, keep investors happy and do all of those kinds of things at the same time. So there are times when people will come up and ask me to see them and I literally just can't. So it annoys me not so much for the request, but for my lack of ability to do so, you know? Um, I also have been told by multiple people that it's not good for me to be in the audience during open mics. So I hide in places where I can hear it.
Uh-huh.
And take notes and like figure out like who I thought was the best. And I get people's names and stuff like that after the mic is over, and I'll approach them. But like for me, it's really important, particularly because I'm in a new community, for me to see as many people as possible. And right now we need a more robust open mic, right? We're doing
Mm-hmm.
open mics at 6 p.m., 6 days a week. And I want to double that and start having late night mics as well, so that we're constantly in a position where we can evaluate where people are and what they're doing. I've been very gently sort of going to comics, and it's been received very well so far, but gently going to comics and going, hey, can I talk to you about this joke? Can I talk to you about like what you're trying to do with this joke? You know, what your goal is? You know, once I feel like they're at a point where they can even take notes. Because I feel like if I was starting off in comedy and I was just trying to get out all the stuff that I thought was funny, and then I had somebody come up and go, you know what you should do, like that would drive me nuts. Like there needs to be a creative process that has to be kind of in a vacuum a little bit in the beginning, because that's when the artist is establishing their voice and figuring out what kind of comedy they're going to be doing. And like a lot of times, particularly with young folks, and by young I mean people who are just starting out, I don't mean age, but folks who are just starting out, you can already tell who their favorite comic is, right? I can hear, you know, there was a time in New York where I think you and I used to stand in the back of the room, but there was somebody who would stand in the back of the room with me and would be like, Hannibal's, that's one of Hannibal's. Because if somebody like loves a certain comic, sometimes they kind of start to pick up the cadence and they start to emulate. And so there has to be, at some point, usually around the 5-year mark, they start to break away from that I've noticed, and start to really establish their own voice. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody wants to hear this, but the truth of the matter is that it takes about 10 years of doing it every day to get really good at it. And I think that from what I've seen, when folks start to hit that like 6 to 8 year mark, they start to compare themselves to other people and start going like, well, how come they got it and I didn't get it? And how come this and how come that? And I think the thing that's the most important to like drive home for newer comedians is that there is no finite amount of spots available. There is no finite amount of comedians. It's not like, oh, we can only take 300 comedians a year or whatever. You know what I mean? It needs to be completely open. And I think that comparing other people's gigs versus the gigs that you get it's not healthy. And it can kind of turn your comedy a little bit into like have like bitter tones to it, and that can be kind of off-putting.
I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you as far as like how long it takes to really be like a solid comic. However, I do think that there's a faster track if you're a writer comic, like a writer primarily, because I feel like if you're just like a really good writer, like you can work for, I mean, it did happen to me where like when I started working, just because I was a good writer, I started getting opportunities for writing gigs like fairly quickly. Right. I mean, that's not the end all of doing stand-up comedy, but I'm just saying, just like as far as like a career track, like you can be a solid writer and then just write. But I mean, it's a lot of work as well.
Well, it is. And I think a big part of the goal in comedy is not necessarily to just be a stage hound, right? You have to also be a road dog. You also have to be able to you have to be able to go
stage
into
hound
a writer's
road. Are they
room.
all animals?
Stage hounds and road dogs. They can be. I'll come up with some more.
That's awesome.
I think that it's really important to figure out what those tertiary revenue streams are inside of stand-up comedy, which obviously writing is a huge one. And it's one that actually can pay off in a way that's like way more financially beneficial for a comic. And, you know, I like to see people ending up in writers' rooms. There's a lot of comics that I left in New York that I'm really hoping are going to advance into those writers' rooms.
Yeah.
in a matter of moments, and as soon as seasons start picking up again, I feel like there's a lot of people that are ripe for the pick. There are also quite a few here that are really great writers that are how do I say this? If you have a really great writer and all they do is write inside of a coffee shop every day, they end up just writing jokes about coffee shops. You know what I mean? So it's really important as you're developing your writer's voice to be inside of different environments and have like other things to observe that are outside of your comfort zone, that are not necessarily traditional, because I think that makes a more robust writer in the long run.
Okay, and that's all great. Although I do think we're getting a little bit off the subject for this particular episode.
Okay.
But this is all great stuff and should be its own episode, I think. But okay, so we're talking about getting booked, and then so let's talk about the email booking route. So what about, how do people approach you over email? What's acceptable for you?
I'm not a huge fan. I don't really like watching tapes. And I know that sounds crazy because I am the person who's predominantly in charge of looking at the submissions for Skankfest. And I assure you, I watch each and every tape. Sometimes we get 700, sometimes we get 1,000. It can be kind of crazy. That's Todd Glass.
Todd, hey, what's up, Todd Glass? Creeping in the back. Creeping in the background, Todd Glass. So funny. Yeah, you were great, man. You're great on the show. You were great. Oh, sorry. You were great. Just tell him he was great.
He says you're great over and over again. You really enjoyed it. The emails are a little bit trickier. Like, I do watch all the tapes when I get submissions, and 9 times out of 10, people will give me a tape, and the tapes are specific, right? For each festival, they'll tell you how long it needs to be, and they'll tell you, like, sometimes they'll even tell you what they're looking for. And no lie, I've had people submit 20-minute tapes, and it is not an automatic, it's not an automatic dismissal. Like, I watch all 20 minutes, but the problem is that if you give me a 20-minute tape, you're giving me 20 minutes of reasons to go, I don't know. You know what I mean? I think that short and sweet is better, particularly for the workload that many of these people who are dealing with submissions and stuff like that goes. But at the end of the day, I've booked people off of 20-minute tapes before, so it's not a hard and fast rule. And the truth is that there aren't any hard and fast rules. Yeah. But when I get emails out of the blue from people, I typically am going to be like, I'm going to be more amenable if it's, first of all, another comic introing me to a comic. A comic that I've worked with and that I respect introing me to a comic. That is a better route to go than just a cold call or a cold email. And in a cold email, I feel like it's important to kind of like put out what you've done so that you aren't getting automatically dismissed. I try not to do that. But I will also say that I have an email. I have an email address that probably has about 100 unanswered emails from people requesting since we opened on April 1st. And it's not that I don't want to get back to them. It's just that I have to build this thing first. And then once I have a house for them to live in, then I can invite them to move in. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I get that analogy as well. One question I have is, this is the way you like it, but then of course it's different from club to club and person to person, obviously. So I'm going to throw in for everybody out there watching, one of the best things to do is just ask around about how each booker likes to be approached.
That's right.
Because it's probably known to people that they know. And so, and I know it's hard, especially if you're like a comedian and you're like, I got into this because I'm antisocial. I don't want to talk to anybody. I get it. But still ask someone, even if you ask that other person over email, that way you won't have to speak to them face to face and you can be safe inside your cocoon.
Exactly. And also it's really important to say that, like, you have to get out of that cocoon. Like, networking is a big part of what we do. And a lot of very talented, amazing comedians can sometimes fall short in their careers because they aren't really good at going to parties or doing. I asked Colin Quinn back when I worked with him years ago on Unconstitutional. I asked him, like, what's your best piece of advice to give to anybody? And he said, tape every set that you do and listen to it, and say yes to every party and function that you're invited to, and go. because networking is a really big part of it, and comics love helping other comics, and if comics don't know you, they're not going to help you, and it's not because they don't like you, it's just you've got to be personable on stage and off stage in order for this to sort of click together and like create an elevation for yourself, you know.
This is actually really interesting because what you just described absolutely terrifies me personally.
I know.
I do not like going to functions and parties. I hate them. I like hanging with people I know, and that's it. I mean, to be honest.
But there's usually some surly person in the back of the room who feels the exact same way as you, and then you end up bonding with them. I mean, I remember being in the back of the room with Matt Bearden at a comedy club years ago, and we became fast friends because we were just analyzing sets and talking about everything. He was like, I'm just so glad I have someone to talk to. And I was like, Jesus, me too. Because I didn't know anybody there, and he didn't know anybody there. And it was just like, it creates like like we're leaning forward in the foxhole together. You know, there's a camaraderie there.
Right. And then I also think, though I do agree with him that is a way to, that is a way, and that's in a smart way to get ahead in comedy and to like hone your sets and to grow your, I guess, circle as a comedian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but that is also, you know, no offense to Colin Quinn, but it's also antiquated because like we live in an era right now where like things totally change because of technology, and there's like a lot of different ways to like get your foot in the door.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of different kinds of functions now. I mean, you can't meet somebody in a Zoom room, you know what I mean? You can't, like, there's the truth of the matter is the tapestry of comedy, just like the tapestry of every industry, is completely changed in the last year. And everybody's playing catch up. Everybody's trying to figure out how to fix. And that's another thing about COVID. That's one of the things that kind of like blew my mind, particularly in New York, but it's happening here too, is that new comics show up and they're like, oh, I'm brand new to comedy. And it's like, we're on lockdown. Like, what are you, we have a year of catching up with people that we haven't booked for a year. And then, you know what I mean? So like, the waiting time is a little longer right now than it normally would be, you know?
I've been doing sold out Zoom shows. You don't understand.
Right.
I don't know why he's touching his watch in that act.
I don't know either, but.
Okay, so definitely like ask around. All right, so now let's talk about those when people do submit with a tape. What makes a good tape? Now we did say following the instructions usually helps. Being funny also helps, I'm sure.
Sure. A lot of people are really worried about sound, like the quality of the tape, and comedy. It's stand-up comedy. Like, it doesn't matter so much what you look like. It doesn't matter so much if it looks like it was filmed in the 70s. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that I can hear you over the audience. If the audience is louder than you are, then even if the audience is responding in a great way, I still can't have an opinion about the joke because I can't hear it. A lot of folks will give me tapes that are from banger festivals, and they like go out and they kill for 8 minutes, and then I'll discover later it's like, okay, yeah, that was a really great tape that they sent in, but they're only 8 minutes, and it works in 1,000 a group of like 1,000 rowdy people who've watched like 15 minutes of like amazing comedians. They can get their amazing tape out of that one event, but that's not necessarily indicative of their level of performance most times, you know what I mean? And I think that it's important to get a tape that's really indicative of what you do, what I do. You know what I mean?
Speaking from a comics point of view, no, I'm not going to send you an indicative tape if I got a great tape. No way. What, are you kidding? That's not happening.
I get it.
Oh, this mediocre tape of me.
But the other side of it too is that folks will be like, oh, I would send you a tape, but I don't really have a good tape, and I've been trying. It's like, just send me the last tape of the last day you did. It doesn't matter. I just need to hear your material. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not judging somebody based on what their audience reaction is. In fact, I ignore it. You know, I need to form my own opinion about what they're doing. And it doesn't have to necessarily make me laugh, but it has to put me inside of the space where I can go, oh, I see how this is funny. I see that people would enjoy this. Because I don't only book people that I think are funny. I book people that the world thinks is funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's my job as a booker, is to take the ego out of it. Right.
Yeah, I understand that. But I mean, for me, I guess that sometimes if the world and I don't agree, I'm just like, screw the world. But that's how. But I'm not I'm not booking for the world. I'm just doing my projects, and so that's different.
Right.
Where I can just be a big snooty patootie, which is what I call myself sometimes. All right, so that's great information. I also tell comics all the time to make sure about sound, and even we even talked on one episode about just like specifically how technically to record your sound in a simple way so that your voice is always clear and separate from the audience, which anybody can do. By the way, just a very quick overview of everybody. You can get a personal record. You can get a personal recorder, or you can use. Here's the easiest thing: use your headphones on your phone and put them in your phone and record your audio of your performance with your headphones up near your
Right here. Yeah.
voice, almost like a lapel mic, and then that you record that and also record the audience from somewhere else and mix those together, and then that'll make your audio amazing. So just get something to put on yourself, or record from the venue. If the venue has a recording and you can mix that with your phone recording, that's good too.
And then I would also say, like, if you are going to just put your camera in the audience and record it that way, that's totally permissible, but don't put it right next to your best friend, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, because they're going to laugh the hardest and they're going to drown out every punchline because they've already heard it. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like that's one of the bigger challenges with me. It's like, oh, he had his girl next to the camera and now I can't hear any of the work he's doing, you know?
That is actually great advice. I didn't even think of, but that does matter. Like if you put your camera next to a too friendly audience, it just seems wrong and fake. But great. Now let's talk about the third thing that I wanted to talk about comics getting booked. What are the biggest no-nos that people have done that have sealed their deal, like sealed their fate as in never getting booked? I mean, I can tell you one of mine that I did with a casting director once, where I was in for casting. For some reason, I didn't want to be there. I don't know why. I had a big attitude, but the casting director said to me, "Hey, you know what? You should bring your headshot and resume to every audition." She said to me. Oh, I know, because I had to come off of a vacation thing to do this audition, so I was mad. And then, I had a very smart remark for her, which she didn't like, and that was the end of it. So that was one of my no-nos, being a smart ass when you shouldn't take it personal when you're auditioning for things.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. I personally don't like it when comedians come out on stage and immediately tell the audience that they know what they're thinking, right? It's a level of presumption that really bugs me, and it comes in the form of, I know what you think I look like, and then it's always like, I look like this rapist and also his victim, or I look like you know, this famous person and also this other famous person, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, I get it, but that format is just, it's been done to death. And it kind of immediately makes my eyes glaze over, specifically for when you're auditioning for festivals. If you're a New York comic or an LA comic, oftentimes those festivals aren't in New York or LA. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that a lot of comics have 5 minutes, like a nice type 5 on what it's like to ride the subway in New York. And it's like, okay, like, we get it, but it's a location specific joke that people in the audience that take the 7 train are going to have a bigger reaction to. So you're almost shooting yourself in the foot if you are trying to do that same material or submitting a tape to a festival in Denver, like High Plains, right? Mm-hmm. And I just, I really caution people against those sort of location heavy jokes that require somebody to be in New York or be in California or be anywhere. You know, it needs to be more, is the word ubiquitous, more evergreen. Like everybody needs to be able to access these jokes, right? And I know that particularly when you're dealing with international festivals, folks that are already trying to figure out how to listen to you and maybe not their first language, which they can do very well and still have really good timed reactions, they're going to depart from you a little bit if you make it too specific to a place they've never been.
Mm-hmm. That's actually interesting to think about. I mean, I on purpose tried not to do things where people have to have a specific reference to understand a bit, or if it is a specific reference, I explain it in the setup in a funny way so that they get the information so that everyone can enjoy it. I'm not a big referential joke person anyway, but I also get that you don't like that that like I know what you're thinking sort of thing. There's tons of jokes which I hate in particular. That may not even be like advice for every comedian, but that's definitely like when they're pitching to you, that's advice specifically. Yeah, because that's I mean, I agree. I would yawn at that joke too.
If your entire set is about you complaining about your beard, I'm sitting there going, why don't you just shave your beard then? Like, you know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing. It's like everybody loves Raymond. Why didn't she just move her house? Why is she living next door to her in-laws? It makes no sense to me, right? So it's like one of those things where if you have the ability to change the situation, but you're just talking about the situation, it seems kind of, I don't know, like ham-fisted, I think is the right word.
You didn't see the Raymond episode about the volatility of the real estate market where she couldn't move because everything was locked down? No, I'm kidding. There wasn't.
I guess I missed that one. Everybody loves Raymond.
So I actually only have one more question for Rebecca on this subject. So if you guys have questions out there and you're watching, put them in the comments now and we'll throw them up on screen and we'll get those questions answered. But my last question about getting booked for you, Rebecca, is this. What are outside ways of getting booked? I mean, the one outside way of getting booked is you're super funny, everybody talks about you, so then eventually people come looking for you. But are there other ways that you think that people get booked that are kind of like outside?
Favors to comics. Like if a comedian that I work with and respect says, look, you're not going to get a chance to see him, I just need you to book him, just do me a solid, I generally say yes. I would say most recently, and this is something that we've sort of all been dealing with in the booking world for the last like maybe 4 years, maybe longer, is these celebrities who have decided now they want to be stand-up comics, you know, or YouTube stars who, or like personalities is what I would say, who have decided that they want to go into comedy. And I get requests from agents and managers who will ask me if I'd be willing to put them up on stage and see them. And I mean, that is an outside way, but it's a way that many of us sort of aren't super thrilled about, and we'll do it, but it's a little bit grudging, I'm not gonna lie.
I guess then the note for comics is like, if you come in that way, be nice, be funny, just be 100%. A solid person. Yeah. And
I don't really care how many Instagram followers you have, or if you TikToked recently or whatever, you know, that stuff doesn't really it doesn't really do it for me anyway. Like I'm really a live theater person. That's my background. I like watching shows, you know? And so if I am seeing a tape, sometimes people like submit a tape and it'll just be a video of them doing something on YouTube that's not even stand-up comedy. And that's always sort of baffled me. Like, I don't understand why people would think that translates. It's almost disrespectful to the art form to me.
I will ask one question though, and this is I know I promised you no gotcha questions, but this is kind of one. So you say like you don't care about the Instagram and TikTok stuff, but obviously it's part of the comedy career path now. Like that's part of it. So
yeah, grudgingly, it's grudging, but yeah, it's part of it, and it's something that I have to take into consideration, particularly now, because while the philosophy and the mission statement and what the Creek is about has not changed, the structure that we have here is different. We are also a headliner club now. So I have to pay attention to that because I have to make investors happy, and I have to make sure that I'm making enough money for everybody to want me to keep doing it, basically, you know?
It's the Arts Academy Podcast. You can find us at artsacademypodcast.com.